The title of my talk is Be Encouraged. I may not mention be encouraged, but well, I will. If you turn to 1 Samuel chapter 30, it's a set of verses that's used quite often when we talk about being encouraged. But just as you're turning there, this is not a statement from some famous person. It's from me. I just made it up. And if it becomes famous, then I'll be famous, and I probably won't like that much. So hopefully I'll be famous for the gospel, not for what I've said, which is most important. When courageous people act, they act with the faith and the strong hope that they will survive the experience. There is a combination of many things involved, which would depend on the circumstances. In general, a life is involved, and a public exhibition of the strength of a person's convictions. Having that in mind, there are lots of statements about courage. The word courage is interesting, or to the word encourage, they sort of have similar meanings. But the word means, you look like a stranger, Pastor Ward. Look at a new person here, Pastor Ward. But you're not a stranger. How are you? The word that is used for encourage is translated far more times not being encouraged. It's translated as being strong and strength and force and all that kind of stuff. And as many words that are used in all languages, they can be used as a positive, in a positive sense, but also in a negative sense. So we're going to look at the more along the positive side of it today. I'm sure you're all happy about that. So we read in 1 Samuel chapter 30 and verse 4. And then David and the people that were with him lifted up their voice and wept until they had no more power to weep. And I'm going to set my clock going here. I'm always off. Okay. I don't know whether anybody's been in a situation like that. I'm sure some of us have at different times. You get to the point where you've wept so much that you kind of run out of the emotion and the tears for what has happened, and you end up become rather numb to the circumstances, and it can be tragic in people's lives. Very, very, I can imagine, depressing. As people will sit around and just look at one another and shrug their shoulders and say, what do we do now? That's a Day of Pentecost statement. What do we do now? I don't know whether the people that were there on the Day of Pentecost were in that sort of a situation. They heard everything about themselves on the Day of Pentecost. And obviously it tore them up. It really tore them up, because at the end of it all, they said, men and brethren, what do we do? What do we do? Well, in this little story, they weren't very happy. And David's two wives were taken captive, Ahinoam, the Jezreelitess, and Abigail, the wife of Nabal the Carmelite. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him. He was really not in a good place. The people were mad at him for what had happened. They were blaming him for the circumstances. They were blaming him for their situation. No doubt they had a lot of their personal effects stolen. They had their children and women stolen. they were left, and here's this group of men that were seriously upset with their leader, and they were going to stone him to death. I'm glad it's against the law here today. I might not have survived the experience. But they were talking about it because the soul of all the people was grieved. They were not thinking of just their physical circumstances. They were hurting. This was deep, deep, deep hurt. Beyond what you could probably speak about, beyond what anybody else could understand. You know, it's situations where I remember going up to the hospital when Evelyn was in the hospital, and sitting there with Evelyn, and she was zonked out. She probably didn't have a clue who was there. I didn't think so. But the situation was beyond my control. I had no control over it. Bill had no control over it. Nobody. We were sort of milling about it. What do we do now? I said, the best thing we could do is pray. The worst thing we could do is do nothing. And there's really no room in between those two things. You can do nothing and you can pray. And there's a world of difference in between those two things. So obviously we prayed. People all over the world prayed for Evelyn. But I can remember times when I was sitting there and I was holding Evelyn's hand. I don't know whether she knew that or not. She did actually. She actually knew that, which was quite amazing to me, because I said to her on several occasions, if you can feel my hand, Evelyn, give me a squeeze. And she squeezed my hand every time. So it was amazing. She probably can't remember doing that. But she was there. She was in there. Her soul was distressed, obviously. But she knew that I was there and I was holding her hand, because when I said that, she would respond. She didn't break my hand or anything. It was just a slight squeeze of the hand. It was encouraging for me to have that reaction from Elliott, because I knew that there was still something there that was holding on to hope, that was being encouraged perhaps by the Spirit that was living inside of her. And so David is probably in a similar situation here, where he is, in a sense, beyond hope. So what does he do? All the people were grieved, every man for his sons and for his daughters, but David encouraged himself in the Lord. So he had nowhere else to go. Where could he go? He couldn't go to Saul. Saul wasn't very happy with him. He couldn't go and round up a bunch of guys. The guys were there. They wanted to stone him. He couldn't go and talk with his wife because they'd been stolen, or any of his wives for that matter. Everything that he had that probably would have been somewhat of a comfort to him in the natural sense was gone. It's totally gone. Ripped away from him by an enemy. And we can sometimes think that we're in that kind of a situation where everything is ripped away from us and there's nowhere to go. Where do we go? The only place to go is back to the Lord. You know, you can come and you can talk to people and come and talk to me, and I might get to the point where I say, I don't know what to do either. You know, so the only thing we can do is pray, and pray we will, and you know, we'll encourage other people to pray with us. But it's from that point, David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. From that point, David had to have courage to go on. He couldn't just stop there. He was alive. He couldn't just stop and say, well, that's it, I'm going to sit around here now and perhaps I'll just dry up and blow away, or I'll starve to death or something. If you don't drink for 3 days, you die. Apparently that's how it works. But he had to then get up and be the leader again. And when you stop and think about the circumstances that he was facing, that everything about his circumstances and about the people that were with him were bad, and he was going to have to get up and be a leader. But he couldn't do it in his own strength. He had to get up and be a leader in the strength of God. That's why to encourage is to have courage come into you. So if somebody's encouraging you, they're hopefully thinking that as I speak to you, you're gaining courage to move forward. And as you move forward, your circumstances, although they're not that great, you're looking at them and saying, okay, by faith, I believe I can handle this. I can't handle this. You, Lord, you can handle this. And in handling that, Lord, by that faith and the courage that I have received from the Spirit, the strength is one of the meanings of the word courage. By that strength and through that faith, I have the hope that at the end of this, I'm going to survive this experience. It's not going to kill me. At least for the most part, for most of us, it won't. And you'll come out of that with this enormously valuable experience that you've had that you can take. It's yours. It's very, very personal. Extremely personal. Nobody can feel as sick as you feel when you're sick. Nobody can feel your pain. We can sympathise because you have pain. We may have had a pain at some time in the past. We may be able to empathise somewhat with what you're going through, but we cannot feel it. We can't feel your pain. And only God can feel your pain through Jesus Christ, who felt all the pain that any man could ever suffer on our behalf. So he knows already what your pain is like. He knows what your sickness is like. He knows already the circumstances that you're going through. We know the scriptures tell us that he's been through everything that we could ever imagine. And we can't stand in a corner on our heads and sort of hope to get a victory that way because all the blood's rushed to our head. That's not going to work. The thing that we've got to do is take our courage from the Spirit and go forward with that. And Paul said, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. All things. So when things come against, we heard in the gifts today, there's nothing that can come against us that we can't handle. We might think at the time that we can't handle that. We may think within ourselves, for goodness sake, Lord, just kill me now. And I dare say there have been people that have felt that way at different times. Some of us may be a little bit wimpier than others, and it doesn't take long to get to that point where we say, get rid of me now. I'm done. I'm done with this world. I'm done with the situations. I'm done. Look, just, here's my don't go to jail. Here's my don't go to jail card, Lord. Take it now and I'm done. Forget it. I don't want to do this anymore. No. While you're here, God wants you here for a reason. He wants you here to do what he wants you to do, what you're capable of doing. Everybody that exhibits courage believes to some extent that they're capable of doing what they're about to embark upon. I don't know whether the natural sort of courage in war and all that kind of thing is maybe a little bit off balance a little bit because things are happening that are not normal. But courage is an amazing trait. It's an amazing emotion in a sense because you sort of look at something and you just dive in and you go for it. and you do it. And you've always got in your mind that you can accomplish something when you exhibit courage. You can actually accomplish something. And it's that faith that's in you that tells you you can accomplish something. It's the Spirit in you that is guiding you, directing you, so that you can actually accomplish something. And out beyond it, like I say, out beyond that, there's that hope that's set before you that you will survive that experience. So we never give up hope, because that's always before us. And I think Pastor Ward last week used one of my favourite sayings, next year in Jerusalem. I always thought it was the Jews in Russia that said that. I come to find out, I looked it up while he was during the talk, come to find out that all the Jews all over the world, Yom Kippur, at the end of the day, at the end of their prayer, say, next year in Jerusalem. That's their hope. Our hope is real, theirs not so much. Our hope is real. I don't particularly care if it's not next year. I'm quite happy for this year. But if we go, I want everybody to go. And all the people say, amen. We all want to go. We all want to go at the same time and be there all at the same time. I'll be younger, just so you know. You might not recognise me. Deuteronomy 31. This is an amazing set of verses, and there's something else beyond that, where Joshua said something very much the same. Joshua is appointed the new leader. Moses has done his duty. He's 120 years old, and God's whispered in his ear, "You're done, Moses." He was the epitome of the Old Testament. Joshua was a type for the New Testament. The name Joshua is Yeshua. It's Jesus in the New Testament. That's where Jesus comes from the name Joshua. So here's the deliverer is being appointed by the Old Testament law. And so Moses, verse 1, Deuteronomy 31, Moses went and spoke these words unto all Israel. And he said to them, I'm 120 years old this day. I don't know whether they all sang happy birthday. I can no more go out and come in. And also the Lord has said to me, thou shalt not go over this Jordan. So the law stopped at the point of entry to the promised land. They were going to go over to the promised land. Two tribes made their home on the wrong side of the river, but they were encouraged to go in and help the others take the promised land. That other bit became part of it. The Lord thy God, he will go over before thee. He will destroy these nations from before thee, and thou shalt possess them. And Joshua, he shall go over before thee, as the Lord has said. So Jesus has gone before us. I can't even begin to imagine as a natural man that when Jesus came, the courage that it must have taken for him to go through with that. He obviously knew a lot about what was going to happen. My mind can't really come to terms with the whole idea of a 12-year-old sitting somewhere in the temple and exchanging words with the scribes and the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the priests of the day. And they were absolutely amazed at his wisdom. And when his mother came, and she said, typical mother to a 12-year-old, what do you think you're doing? We've been worried sick about you. And his response was, the King James Version doesn't translate it as well as it perhaps could be. The King James, his response really, if you get it all sorted out, was, you know full well that I'm supposed to be here doing what I'm doing. You know this is my place. And Jesus probably knew what his end was going to be, that in 18 years' time, he was going to be crucified. And this young child at that age lived with the knowledge that he was to be the sacrifice. He got to the point where he's in the Garden of Gethsemane and he's praying and he's undergoing this natural phenomenon of having sweat drops of blood. This is normal, this is not normal, but under severe stress, other people have done that. And he said to his father, look, Dad, I really don't want to do this. Can you stop the whole process? How about we just stop here? But I understand it has to be done, so your will, your desire is that we go through with this. For what reason? What we see here today. Everybody that's here today, you were the reason Jesus died. He could see beyond that day. He saw each and every one of us here on that day. He knew what was going to happen. He knew that he was going to take the pain and the suffering and the distress, your guilt, your depression, everything that went through, that you've gone through in your life, Jesus took. Now you can't say that would not have taken a reasonable amount of courage. It would have. For that young man, most young men at 30 years of age would be thinking to themselves, I've got most of my life ahead of me. I've got everything to look forward to. And Jesus was looking forward to one of the most terrifying deaths a person could ever suffer. That was what he was looking forward to. He knew that he was going to be resurrected, but the pain that he went through getting there was horrifying, absolutely horrifying. He actually survived that. They didn't break his legs, which normally would have happened. So a lot of things that didn't happen to Jesus that should have happened, he died. He died for us. Nobody went up to him when he was on the cross and said, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand. They just stood around and gaped. Horrified. Some people knew who he was, what he was there for. He crossed the Jordan on our behalf. And so here we see that in verse 3, the Lord thy God will go over before thee, he will destroy these nations from before thee, and thou shalt possess them. And Joshua, he shall go over before thee, as the Lord has said. And the Lord shall do unto them as he did to Sihon and to Og, kings of the Amorites, and unto the land of them whom he destroyed. And the Lord shall give them up before your face, that you may do unto them according to all the commandments which I have commanded you. Be strong and of good courage. So Moses is speaking words of encouragement. They were going to do something that they'd never done before. They were going to go and possess a land that was already possessed. They were going to dispossess the people that were there. It was no doubt a very scary prospect to think that this nation was going to go in there and fight. They already knew, because they'd had a foretaste of it, when the 12 went over the mountains and had a bit of a peek. They said, yeah, it's a great place, but there's giants there. And there were giants in the land. But they had to go forward. There was nowhere else to go. They couldn't go back. The gate was shut behind them. They had to go forward. Be of good courage, fear not, nor be afraid of them. Can you imagine the crowd all walking around muttering to themselves, saying, yeah, right, yeah, we know what's out there. Yeah, right, don't be afraid. Yeah, I can understand that. Sure, yeah, right, good. How are we going to fight them? They're bigger than we are. They're stronger than we are. They're established. They've got cities with walls. They've got this, they've got that, they've got something else here. Here we are. What are we doing? Wandering around the desert. We've got tents, cows and sheep and goats. And we're going to kill them with rocks or what? God had the plan. All they had to do was cross the river. And it required courage for these people to do what they were going to do. They had to make that decision. Do we cross? Do we stay? Do we cross? Do we stay? I think Joshua's statement to the children of Israel was one of the greatest. He said, be strong and of good courage. As for me and my family, we're going. He essentially said, I'm going to go in there and fight. What you guys do is entirely up to you. So Joshua and his family were prepared to cross the river, regardless of what ended up being some 2 million people behind him were going to do. Joshua said, I'm going. Jesus said, I'm going to do this. It's your will, it's your desire, Father. I'm going to do this. All the people that were going to be saved were not saved yet. They were behind him. He couldn't rely on them. He just relied on the strength of God in his life. Joshua just relied on the power of the Lord in his life. As for me and my household, we're going to cross the river. If you want to come, come. If you don't want to come, up to you. But I'm going, guys. Okay? The rest of you people, okay, get ready. Cross the water. Another miracle. But such a powerful sort of a picture when we see that. Yeah, I've got another story in 2 Kings chapter 4. It's Elisha and the woman from Shunem. For time, I don't have the time to go through it, but she was barren. It was her that was barren, or the two of them didn't work well together. She apparently was a wealthy woman, or a wealthy household, member of a wealthy household. She liked Elisha. She made a little cubicle for him in the house, put a bed in it. She provided for him, so that as he passed by, when he went by, he could stop there and he could have a bite to eat and a drink and a bit of a nap and go on his merry way again. There was a problem. She had no children. And she came to him. I'll have to catch up to a few verses as we go through on this one. Go there, 2 Kings 4. Verse 8. Verse 13 or 12. And he said to Gehazi, his servant, call this Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him, and he said unto him, say now unto her, behold, thou hast been careful for us with all this care. What is to be done for thee? Wouldst thou be spoken for to the king or to the captain of the host? And she answered, I dwell amongst mine own people. And he said, what then is to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, verily, she hath no child, and her husband is old. So obviously what Gehazi was very politely saying, ain't going to happen. And in verse 15, and he said to her, call her, he said to him, call her, and when he had called her, she stood in the door, and he said, about this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. And she said, no, my Lord, thou art a man of God, don't lie to me. She couldn't believe it. But it happened. But Elisha had to make a little bit of a step in faith. He had to be courageous. He was saying something that his faith and the hope was out there. He sort of hung it out there. This is what's going to happen. She said, don't you lie to me. It's almost like, I wonder if I could hear those words. Elisha, don't you lie to me, because if this doesn't happen, buddy, I'm coming after you. Next year when you come by, if I don't have this child, you're in trouble. And she did. And in verse 18, so when the child was grown, it fell on a day that he went out to his father, to the reapers. And he said to his father, my head, my head. And he said to a lad, carry him to his mother. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon and died. This was the child of promise that Elisha had promised. And now the Shunammite woman was going to show some courage and faith. And she said, I've got to go and talk to this guy. This is not good enough. You gave me the son only to have him die and put me in mourning and grief and depression. That's not right. If you're going to give me a son, keep him alive. So they laid him on a bed and she took off. I don't know how far she had to go. She took off and met up with Elisha. And in verse 26, as we go back to verse 25, she went, came unto the man of God to Mount Carmel. And it came to pass, when the man of God saw her afar off, he said to Gehazi his servant, behold, yonder is the Shunammite. I know that lady. She's coming to visit me, surely. Run now, I pray thee, to meet her, and say to her, it is well with thee, it is well with thy soul, it is well with your soul, it is well with thee, it is well with your husband, is it well with the child? And she answered, it is well. That is confidence, it is well. The child's home, laying on a bed, dead. And she's saying, it is well. I'm in the right place. A lot of people would have just said, well, that's the end of that, isn't it? What do I do now? Bury my child, mourn, grief. Next time Elisha comes through and said, guess what? You know, that child that you gave me no longer exists. Dead in the ground. I'm sad. Too late. I can't have another one. Time has passed me by. But no, she didn't do that. She took courage and she said, I am going to get this problem fixed. Very few of us would do that. We would just accept the circumstances. We would say, died. The wives would go and cry on their husband's shoulder, oh, hubby, my son has died, your son's died. What am I going to do about all of this? Oh my goodness, we're going to stop the harvest and go home and do all the mourning stuff and bury the child, and you know, it goes on for a long time and it's going to put us behind. I hope it doesn't rain. There's a whole bunch of stuff could have happened. But no, she said, no, I need this problem solved. And I've got to get on the donkey and go and see Elisha. I've got to talk to him. And she does. She came to the man of God to the hill. She caught him by the feet. But Gehazi came near to thrust her away. And the man of God said, let her alone, for her soul is vexed within her. She is in great distress, obviously. She's already said that her family is well. Now they're going to find out why this distress has occurred. And the Lord hath hid it from me, and hath not told me. Then she said, did I desire a son of my Lord? Did I not say, do not deceive me? Then he said to Gehazi, gird up thy loins, and take my staff in thy hand, and go thy way. If thou meet any man, salute him not. Don't stop and talk to anyone along the way. Get there and do the job. Straight. Zip, now. Go. Go. So he took off. And lay my staff upon the face of the child. The mother of the child said, As the Lord liveth, and as thy soul lives, I will not leave you. And he arose and followed her. So she said, I'm not going home without you. You made the promise. You need to make sure the promise is kept. So again, she's displaying this enormous amount of courage, because Elisha could have said, oh, come on. It's too late. It's all over. Go away. Leave us alone. He didn't. He'd asked God to solve the problem. So he now was going to stand in front of God with courage and faith, with the hope that out the other end of this, he's going to get a result. So he went with her. And it took some time. A little unusual how it all worked. And Gehazi passed on before them, laid the staff upon the face of the child, and there was neither voice nor hearing. Wherefore he went again to meet him and told him, saying, The child is not awake. When Elisha was come into the house, behold, the child was dead. So there was no doubt about this. Now we've got a whole bunch of people who have seen this child not alive. For the most part, by this time, everybody would say, no, it's too late. I don't know what the child's condition was by this time either. Days have passed. But no, they said, within themselves, they were standing on a promise that God had fulfilled already. They were thinking that God cannot leave that promise undone. When we think about meeting the Lord in the air, and we get up and go to work on Tuesday, this coming week, we go to work. The Lord didn't come back on the weekend. No, but he's coming back tomorrow, and one day you'll be right. One day you'll be right, and he'll come back tomorrow. One day, as we say, next year in Jerusalem, we'll be right. It'll be correct. We can't wallow in misery here because we're here. If you're here and you're filled with the Spirit and you're rejoicing in the Lord, rejoice in the Lord. Be courageous. Walk with faith, not by sight. Jesus Christ hasn't come back yet. The promises have not been fulfilled quite yet. And so we see here, Elisha went in, therefore, and shut the door upon them, between them, and prayed unto the Lord. And he went up and lay upon the child, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands, and stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. It was a very unusual and to some extent embarrassing or humbling process that Elisha went through to have this happen. And then he returned and walked in the house to and fro and went up. So, well, it didn't happen. He's waiting. Come on, we're waiting. We're not waiting in vain. We are not waiting in vain here today. We're waiting for a promise to be fulfilled. We're waiting for the hope that is laying before us to be fulfilled. We have the courage to walk on, no matter what anybody else says. No matter what anybody else calls you. No matter how anybody treats you, you have courage to walk on. Because we understand the hope that is before us. We understand that. When the children of Israel are crossing the river, what could they see? The river, but across the other side was a material thing, the land that God had promised. the gate. They could see the land. It was there. They couldn't see all of it, but they could see the land. The river was in flood. No doubt there were a number of them that scratched their heads. Oh my goodness, how are we going to get across that? How do we get across the Jordan? How do we get across our Jordan? We had to have courage the day that we got baptized. We had to cry out to the Lord, just like the Shunammite woman cried out. Just the same as she got a result, we're going to see a result. We're waiting for the promise. We're pacing up and down inside the house. We're thinking to ourselves, when? We sing the hymn, "Oh Lord Jesus, how long? Oh Lord Jesus, how long?" I saw an advertisement for a t-shirt once. It says, "I didn't think it would take this, I thought it would take longer to get this old." Unfortunately, it doesn't take very long at all to get this old. I thought when I came to the Lord 41 years ago that the Lord was coming back tomorrow. And 41 years later, he's still coming back tomorrow sometime. And I'm waiting for that. But I'm not going to give up. And it doesn't matter what they do to us between now and tomorrow, the tomorrow to come. I'm not going to give up. We don't need to give up either. It's important that we don't give up. He returned, walked in the house to and fro, went up, stretched himself upon the child, and he sneezed 7 times. And the child opened his eyes, and the promise was restored. The Garden of Eden was an amazing place, and God put mankind, in a sense, in the Garden of Eden, and they fell. And if you follow through from that point to Jesus' time, he said, "I am the door. I am the way, the truth, the life. I am the door. If any man knocks, I will open it to him." The gate of Eden was blocked by angels with flaming swords. No, it wasn't Star Wars. But it was blocked. Man couldn't go back into that situation. He could only go forward to knock on the door. And it takes courage to keep going and knocking on the door. We've knocked on the door. We've had the door open to us. And we've had a little bit of a peep inside to see what's there. A little bit of a glimpse into the everlasting. When we receive the Spirit, and so many people say when they receive the Spirit, "Wow, it's all true. That's amazing. It's real." A lot of people that have been through these doors and sat in these seats have lost the understanding of the reality, and they've gone back outside the door and closed it because they've lost courage, and they've lost faith, and they've lost hope. Well, they didn't want any of that. Church at Ephesus, I was reading that, it says, "I'm unhappy with you," to the church. Why? Because you've lost your first love. You've walked back outside the door. And what I'm calling you, the church at Ephesus, and what I'm calling you to do now is to repent of that and get back on track and go back through the door. Walk into the new heavens and the new earth, which in a sense is like a type of Eden, wherein dwells righteousness, no death, no sorrow, no pain, none of the things that in this world sort of we bump up against all the time: pain, sorrow, depression, misery, etc., etc., etc. You know, we have it, and yet through it all we can rejoice. And we need to have that courage. We need to start with courage, because all of this is personal to each and every one of us. It's your personal story. It's not my story. Your story is your story. Your personal courage is your personal courage. Your walk is your walk. Your faith is your faith. The vision of the hope that lays before us, we can all see. We may see it in each of our mind's eye a little differently than each other. However, it's at the end, it's going to be the same hope. It's going to be the hope that Jesus Christ died for, that he had courage to be able to stand up and say, I'll do that. I'm going to do that. Because there's more at stake than just me. Usually, when courage is exhibited in very trying times, there are more lives at stake than just your own. There's other people. Their lives are at stake as well. And you throw yourself at the problem, in the natural sense, you throw yourself at the problem, hoping with faith that you can make something happen that is going to change the circumstances of all those people that you're trying to get out of the problem. And you're looking forward, you say, out the other end of this, if I'm successful, and I believe I can be, out the other end of this, all these people are going to go and live. They're going to live. Jesus Christ did that. All these people that I see and I know about are going to live. The potential is you're going to live forever with him. And it's just going to take a little bit of courage, some faith, and don't lose sight of the hope. And all the people say.